Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Global World. And again, we have a special talk for startups from around the world to solve specific challenges that you guys are trying to solve when you build businesses. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, we truly want to help, and we find people globally with relevant expertise on specific topics. So today we have an interesting and very specific topic on how to pitch with purpose for impact startups. And here with me today, we have pitch coach David Beckett. Hi, David. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Daniel. Very happy to be here.
Well, David is an international pitch coach who has trained over 1,500 startups to win over 360 million euros in investments. He is also trained more than 25,000 professionals at companies such as Booking.com, Tommy Hilfiger, ING, PwC, Google, and 29 countries, as well as over 30 TEDx speakers. David is a creator of Pitch Coach Canvas, author of the book Pitch to Win and Blue Moon Pitch, and a host of the Essential Pitch podcast. Also, we had three podcasts already with David about how to pitch to and how to win a competition and how to pitch to your customers. And all of this is already on our YouTube, and you can watch it after this talk. In the meantime, I would like everyone to press the like button so this content will be shared with more entrepreneurs around the world. And of course, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below. And if you are on this live stream right now with us, please ask your questions, and David and I will be happy to answer those. Well, David, great to have you with us. Thanks again for coming to speak to our global audience. And I know you have prepared some slides. Give some more information about yourself, and let's discuss this topic.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Daniel. So, hi to everybody. I'm going to briefly introduce myself. I'm David Beckett. I'm a pitch coach, and I believe that great ideas need a voice. And as Daniel explained, I've been working with startups for the last 9 years now. I've coached more than 1,500 startups and scale-ups, and between them, they raise a load of money. I never say that's because of me. The reason they raised that money is because they were working on something amazing. They'd already achieved something, and they went on to achieve something great with that money. But every pitch starts the process. Every process of funding starts with a pitch. And the challenge is that when you're under time pressure and you've got an audience in front of you, the audience could be one person, could be 10, could be 50, could be 500. When we're under time pressure and audience pressure, it's really difficult to think straight. And so my job is to help people prepare, be ready so that they can tell their story in that 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes time pressure, and be clear on what they should say, what they shouldn't say. And I've trained a lot of the teams now. About 30% of my work is with teams that are making impact, who are working on something related to the environment, to social issues, or other areas of impact, something that is not just let's make money, but it's also, yes, let's make money and do something of value. And those two things are the key things we're going to talk about today. It's not only about doing good, and it's not only about making money. It's going to be about both. Then, as Daniel also mentioned, I've worked with a lot of different companies, large companies around the world. Actually, I'll add to my 30th country this year. That'll be Singapore. And I've been working with these kind of companies who are also not the typical pitch kind of people. They're used to doing 30, 60-minute PowerPoint presentations. But what they've seen is that especially when you start an engagement with a customer or you're bringing a new project, you need a short, sharp pitch for people to understand, should I spend more time on this? Should I invest my energy and my attention in this proposition? And so a pitch is essential for people in the startup world, but it's also when you start engaging with those larger customers, they need a short, sharp pitch too. And I believe that great ideas need a voice. We've lived in the wildest times of our lives the last couple of years with COVID, but the wildest times of our lives are probably ahead of us, whether that's political change, it's environment change, it's social change. There are so many things happening in our world today, and it happens at such a fast pace. So the only way for things to be kept on the right track is new, great ideas. But what if they're not heard? What if you've got an idea that could make a difference for the environment, for something social, something in the world that could make an improvement for a lot of people, but you haven't got those tools to be able to get that story over? Well, my goal is that everybody has the tools to be heard, be understood, and then be judged not on the pitch, but on the proposition, on the value that you bring as a professional, as an entrepreneur. So great ideas need a voice. And especially when you're looking to make impact in the world, we really need to hear that voice. So my goal is to help you find a voice for your great ideas during this session. Now you're going to receive a web page. I will share you a link with all the slides. There's many materials I've prepared for you as well. So there's a whole bunch of support materials in addition to this session. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat, and we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have some questions, I think it's all in the chat. Not sure if you can unmute people for the questions, Daniel. I think it's going to be just by chat. I'd love to answer your questions at the end.
Yeah, this will be a chat, and everyone will be able to write their questions. Thank you.
Excellent. So if we have any questions, we'll answer those along the way, and feel free to raise them. More than happy to answer. Okay, so we're here to talk about pitching with purpose. Now, this isn't only about startups that have an impact focus, but it's especially for those startups. There's a lot of tools you're going to get. If your startup is more on the tech side, maybe you wouldn't necessarily categorize it as an impact startup, don't worry, because you're going to get a lot of tools that will help you. But if you are in that area, this is where we're really focusing during this workshop, and that's where you're going to get the tools that you need. Now, I want to start this with one quote, and it's from a guy called David Batstone. Now, he's a Silicon Valley investor. I would describe him actually as an impact warrior. You know, he's worked with an organization and set up an organization called Not for Sale. He's helped over 200,000 people in terms of avoiding slave labor and human trafficking around the world. And what he does is he creates companies that help the communities that are under threat of human trafficking. And his goal is to create companies that overcome some of the biggest brands in the world. You'll hear that a little bit later on. And he's been, when I interviewed him for this, for my podcast a few months ago, he was actually on CNN every hour or two with a 2-minute slot explaining about Not for Sale, Just Business, and so on, about his impact investing. And I spoke with him some years ago. I was at an event. I was a speaker, and then I saw him speak after me. The best speaker I've ever seen on the topic of impact investing and impact entrepreneurship. And the quote that really got me, that was like a light switch, was this. He said, "Why is it that companies who make a mess of the world can make as much money as they like, while companies who do good have to act like and be a charity?" And I have a very vivid memory of him explaining about charity, how it doesn't work. Because if you go to somebody and you say, this year, in year one, I've got this really great idea, it's going to have this impact, could I have $1,000? There's a chance people might say yes. If you go back the second year, again, they might say yes. The third year, they'll start wondering, where's that money going? And the fourth year, they'll probably say no, it's not sustainable, is his point of view. So what you have to do is create companies that do good instead of operating like a charity. But you're in this challenge, you know, why is it that companies making a mess of the world can do that as much as they like and they're allowed to make money? Why is it that we see impact companies as charities? So I think we have to position ourselves as companies in a different way. We have to think a little bit differently. And it's really about tuning into who are we pitching to at any moment. That's a big part of the workshop today. I want to really impress upon you, tuning into that audience is the starting point of any pitch. So now what I'm going to do is talk about a little bit about how you create a pitch, but especially we're going to talk about the audience. So how do most people create their pitch? Doesn't matter whether it's impact or tech. We normally open up PowerPoint and we start typing, we put our thoughts into the slides, we start to try and organize our thoughts in PowerPoint. Now, actually, this doesn't really work, and I'll explain a bit more about that. But my advice is really, apart from should you organize your thoughts in PowerPoint, we shouldn't even get to PowerPoint before we've established a couple of things. So my advice is to stop. Don't open PowerPoint or Keynote or Prezi or whatever it is you use until you know what you're going to say. And I'm going to give you the tools to work out what are you going to say over this workshop. But the first step towards creating any great pitch is this: who's the audience and what do they care about? Now, especially when you're in the impact world, it's important for any pitch, to tune into the audience. But when you're in the impact world, it steers where are you going to put the focus of your pitch in terms of what your business is doing. So let me explain how I do this in general for any startup, for tech startups, and then we'll talk specifically about how you do this for impact. So for any pitch, I always advise take time to research and write down who is the audience for your pitch. And ask yourself questions like this: what's their biggest challenge? Now, if you're pitching to investors, this is not so much their biggest challenge, but the biggest challenge of customers. But if you're pitching to a customer, what's happening in their world? What's the biggest thing that's bothering them right now? Then are they conservative or innovative? Do they want to change the world, completely change the way they're doing things? Or they just want it a bit better than what they've got right now? Being clear on this and doing the research to find this out really helps you, because it changes the way you bring that story, changes the language you use, and you can try to match a little bit about where they're going. For example, if they're really, truly innovative, then you talk about revolutionary technology, about changing the way we do things. If they're conservative, it's more about building on what's already created, moving on from the great success so far. That's a different mindset, a different language. The third one is the thing that's especially relevant for impact startups. Is the audience money focused, or do they also have other issues in their mind, environment or social? If they are money focused, is it cost? Is it growth? And if it's environment, what is it? What aspect of the environment, what aspect of social issues are they interested in? Then moving on, are they theoretical or doers? Do they want to know process? Do they want to know what you did to get here? Or are they more interested in what happens next? For example, project managers, engineers, they want to know how it works. Sales and marketing people want to know what happens next. What do they already know? So you can shortcut. You don't have to tell them all the details about the things they already know. And what might be their biggest objection? What's the number one reason why they might say, this won't work? What kind of objections have you had in the past when you've been making pitches? So this will help you to get clear on who's the audience. You can find this out by doing LinkedIn research, online, see if they have a blog, what are they liking, is there anything they're publishing, have you got any videos on YouTube? Check out the people that you're presenting to or pitching to. This will really help you to get into their mind. But let's talk very specifically about impact startups and how you pitch your purpose. So here's three different situations, three different types of audiences where how you pitch your business will be different. I'm going to give you the first example. This is a competition that I coach on in the Netherlands. It's called Green Challenge. And actually, it's one of the biggest prizes available for impact startups. If you're in the business of reducing CO2, this might be something to think about, because their number one goal is impact in relation to CO2 reduction. And they put a prize of 500,000 euros up for grabs. So that's a really massive prize. So what should you tell them? Which aspect of your business? Because you have a 5-minute pitch in the final. So you could tell them all kinds of things. How do you decide which things do we talk about? So let me give you an idea of how this works. You can kind of look at it as a slider. You have business on one end and impact on the other. So what do we mean by business? Well, in a business pitch, we would be talking the pain that the customers are experiencing and what is the problem, what's it costing them? Time, money, frustration, irritation, if it's B2B, lost customers, bad reputation. These are the things that really start any major pitch. Then we want to talk about market size. How big is the opportunity? course, you want to talk about your product, but traction, and more traction, actually. What's the progress? What proof have you got that this is working? Who's buying already? This is really important for a typical business-oriented pitch. And the business model, people are interested in the team and the skills, the experience, and of course your motivation matters, but they really want a lot of that more rational stuff. Now, if you talk about impact, they want to talk about, yes, the problem you're solving, but potential impact, your motivation, the team motivation, what drives these people, and what can you change? What impact can you have? Now, if you look at this competition, it's very specifically CO2 reduction. So where should the pitch sit? Very much towards impact. Now, that means that you don't necessarily need to have a big amount of traction. You just need to have a clarity on what is the problem you're solving, what have you created to solve it, what have you done to validate that, have you got any progress, and what's your motivation, what's the level of impact that you could have. When you look at some of the winners of this competition, they haven't been the biggest and the best in terms of traction, but they have been the ones who've got clarity on the impact they could make, and they quantified that impact. I'll come to that quantification a little bit later. So this is one example. Now, let me give you another example. You're pitching to a venture capital, same business, but you're pitching to people who have a number one goal, 10 times ROI. You know, they're investing other people's money. So there's only one reason why they're in the room. They want to make money. Now, they're also human beings. They also want to do something of value, and that's a fact. But the first goal, the number one goal, is return on investment. So when you look at that slider, is it about impact? Well, honestly, it's much more about business. You need to prove traction. You need to prove the team is strong. You need to prove that you've got clarity on the problem you're solving and that there's a significant market opportunity. So the wording is different. The topics you talk about is different. The way you bring that story is different. It doesn't completely change, but it changes a lot. I'm going to give you a concrete example in just a couple of minutes about how we've coached a team on the Dragon's Den in the Netherlands to have a big success with this approach. Now, the third one is angel investor. And if you look at their goal, it's a bit variable, depends on the investor. Different people have a different focus. But I would describe, they want a return on investment, but they're there to feel good. Most angel investors have a mixed feeling. Maybe they've been in startups themselves. So they want to help something happen. They want to be involved in something that is good, having a good impact. But they're also interested in ROI. They're not just throwing their money in the bin. So they're investing their own money. So they want a bit of both. So I would say that actually in this case, it's somewhere in the middle. Now, this could be left and right. Could be a bit more on impact, a bit more on business. That's where the research will help you steer. But I wanted to just get across that these are the ways that you can think about your pitch when it comes to, should you be pitching impact or should you be pitching in business? Now, let me give you a concrete example, a real life example. So this was the Dragon's Den in the Netherlands. I think it's around about 18 months ago. And we helped a company, we being Best 3 Minutes. My co-coach, Sheila, worked with them on this occasion because it was in Dutch. And the Dragon's Den, you might be familiar with. You have people in a room, they're all investors. It's a TV show. It's not a typical investment situation, but this gives you a good example of how it works. Now, what this guy had is a business which has recyclable diapers. Recyclable diapers. So now you can't imagine how could that be, but okay, let's forget the product for a moment. But just bear in mind, recyclable, the level of waste of worldwide with diapers is incredible. It's tons and tons, hundreds of millions of tons every year. So the opportunity for this is really huge. Now, what he wanted to pitch was this: the impact on environment, social manufacturing. He wanted to have the products manufactured by people who have a distance from the work market. So people who are out of work, who have maybe some difficulties either with learning or physical difficulties and so on. And he said he needed investment to reduce carbon footprint because he wanted to move the manufacturing from China to the Netherlands so that he could reduce the carbon footprint. However, you have to ask yourself, do you make it about impact? And the way to come to the answer is to talk to our coach, Sheila. And the first thing that she did is she looked at who's the audience. Now, if you take a look at this audience, these are first and foremost impact people. These are not people who are thinking, waking up every day, can I do something better for the environment? These are people who are, number one, focused on, can I make a return on my money? So, do you make it social? We did a bit of research and we found this quote from one of them. It was in a different program and they said, oh, reusable products, that doesn't seem like a very good business model. Now, of course, this is completely outdated thinking, but that's the fact. That's the audience. These are the people with the money. So we've got to bring this story in a way that lands with the people with the money. So you can talk about your integrity and what you really want to achieve, but the goal is we have to get those people to believe. And we have to get those people on board so that they open up the cash, put the money into the business so that the impact can be made. So what Sheila advised is to change this story. All of these points, we re-engineered the story. And instead, the pitch was like this. They already had 750K revenue. Of course, not every business has got that level of revenue, but even if it had been 50K, we would have pitched 50K revenue, because that's proof that people are buying, that this is being taken up by end users. They believe and they want this product. So if it is 50K revenue, we would have put that in. Then the second thing, he achieved that revenue with zero marketing. It was organic take-up. That means that people found it online. They were telling each other. The final result of this is it's organic. Then the investment was required to move manufacturing to shorten delivery lead time so that we could get the logistics working faster and deliver quicker. So that was the message. Oh, and by the way, this is great for the environment, we told them. It makes a big difference because, hey, there's huge waste. But most of all, you're going to have a great business with this. Put money into it. Well, the result, he raised 400,000 euros for that business. Now, I believe that if he'd pitched that as purely impact and social, this would have not been a success. Now, is that good? Is that fair? Is that right? You can debate all day. Did it work? Absolutely. So I think the conclusion on this is to look for this balance. Who are you talking to? Where's the balance between impact and business? Green challenge, that competition for CO2 reduction, focus on how you reduce CO2 first and foremost. Talk to these people, money, money, money. Okay, talk about revenue. Talk about how you've achieved that customer take up with very little marketing, so the cost base is lower. We need the investment so that we can get the costs down, get things moved faster. All of those things are the messaging that these people wanted to hear. And by the way, if you put money into this, you're doing something good. Of course, they want to do something good. They're human beings, but they were money first people. So adapt your pitch depending on who you're pitching to. Now, I've got two more little clips of audio. I interviewed David for my podcast, and there's a couple of things that he said that I think are really essential for anybody pitching an impact-based business. So here's the first clip I want to share with you.
I was speaking in Sweden to a gathering of high business executives, top companies in Sweden. It was gathered by the royal family, the king and queen. And I was the keynote speaker that day, but before I spoke, someone who was there as a guest came up to me, and he was a senior leader in a Swiss bank operating in the Nordic region, and one of the top Swiss banks. And he asked what I did, and I said, well, I'm an investor, and I start several companies, and I explain my business model of making profit but doing good in the world. And the first thing he said to me was, oh my gosh, I should introduce you to my foundation arm. And I said, I don't want to talk to your foundation arm. I want to talk to your investors, right? So immediately, because I said I was doing good, I said I was doing profitable work. He immediately switched into his brain, this is something that you only fund with kind of foundation or charity giving.
Right.
I'm looking forward to the day, David, when I go to an event like that, and I ask him what he does. And he says, well, he invests in energy and healthcare. And I go, oh, well, how are you doing good in the world? As an expectation, as a license for doing things. So flipping that model that we are suspicious. And I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands and in the Nordic region. And there's always a suspicion if you're making money, you must be doing something bad.
So I think this tells you a lot about the mindset of a lot of people who listen to a pitch from an impact entrepreneur. And I think there's a couple of things to take of this. Firstly, pitch yourself as a high-performing business. So again, it depends on who you're talking to, but the majority of people that you'll be speaking to will be more business-oriented than purely impact-focused. If you can find people who are impact-focused, anyway, they want to know that you can continue delivering impact. So pitching yourself as a high-performing business. And what David says, the impact story can position you as a charity. And what you don't want is to people think of you as a charity. You want them to think of you as a business that is making impact, that is getting connected with either companies or customers, and that could grow and develop and be high-performing in the future. So it's a bit of a different mindset. Instead of expecting people to like us because of maybe some guilt, David mentions that in the next clip, but more about this is a great business that is doing something good. And here's a second clip from David. He creates companies, and he's got various portfolio. For example, battery making companies. This is one of his companies. It's called Rebel. And it's the most successful organic beverage in the US. And this drinks company is now more than 100 million company. Here's what he has to say about quality for a social enterprise or an impact enterprise.
But here's the key, David. I set out to build a better beverage than Coca-Cola. I didn't set out to build a charity drink that I'm going to hope you feel bad enough about human trafficking, you'll buy my beverage. Right. I set out to build the best company beverage in the world. And I think sometimes social enterprises don't have that aspiration. They try and lean into the maybe a guilt or some reason that you'll buy my beverage, not because it's the best beverage. So if you're going to be a social enterprise, you don't get a pass on quality. Yeah. Otherwise, if your aspiration is to be the best beverage on your block, you'll probably end up being the best beverage on your block, no further. And so you only rise as high as your aspiration goes.
So I think the message here is, there's no pass on quality. So make it the best that you possibly can. And secondly, think like a Silicon Valley tech investor or CEO or a Silicon Valley CEO. You want to build a company with an amazing team, which is going to connect with customers or companies or organizations, that's going to make something better for them, and that's going to make it so much better that it's such a compelling message that it will cause them to agree to come along with you. And I think that mindset of being at the best, not necessarily accepting that things will be a lower quality, but being more on the highest quality of team, the highest quality of impact, that will be a big difference. Thinking like a Silicon Valley tech investor or CEO can really help us. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more generally about creating any great pitch with a couple of specifics on impact pitching. And then depending on the time, I think we have one more thing on the nature of communication. But let's think about other steps towards creating any great pitch. Firstly, we talk about the audience. The second thing I always focus on is what's your objective. So the audience, who you're pitching to, steers and helps you decide some of the things that you're going to talk about and the things you're not going to talk about. The objective is about having clarity on what you want these people to do as a result of the pitch. And the key is action, not just thinking. So we want them to do something, not just to think about us, but to do something which helps us. So what's quite useful is what could they do at 9:30 on a Monday morning? So for example, if you think, well, I want them to believe in what we do, well, what could they do at 9:30 if they believe in you? You know, they're just believing, that's a thinking difference, but then they think about something else. So what action could they take if you want them to support your project? But how would that support look like? Now, that could be providing you with introductions. If you're making a pitch at an event, that could be having a follow-up meeting. So you plan a follow-up meeting. You know, if you believe in our vision, come and talk to us. Let's arrange a 1-hour meeting to discuss investment opportunities. And maybe you want them to agree to a pilot. Perhaps it's a pitch where you've had 1 or 2 meetings already. Now you're at the stage where you want them to commit to something. Being clear on what's your objective will help you have a finish point for the pitch. Somebody put this to me, you know, if you started telling a joke and you didn't know what the punchline was, it's really difficult to walk people through to the joke and the punchline because you don't know how it's going to finish. So the objective is kind of the punchline of the pitch. What do you want these people to do as a result? So what you can do before any pitch is first go through that research. Who's the audience? What do they care about? And secondly, write down what you want the audience to do as a result of the pitch, focusing on action, not thinking differently. Now, sometimes what happens is people say, yeah, you know, I want them to invest 300,000 euros. But the goal is to go to the first next step. So if that's the big goal, so the big goal is 300,000, the short-term goal would be 1-hour meeting. That might be the first next step. So then your objective for this pitch on the way to the 300,000 is get a 1-hour meeting. And that translates into a call to action at the end of the pitch, which is, if you believe in our vision, come and talk to us. Let's arrange a 1-hour meeting. So think about what would be your first next step with the pitch. Then the next thing you might be thinking, yeah, okay, can I open PowerPoint? I missed my word power there. I think I'm sick of PowerPoint by now, so I shrunk it down to point. You could also be Keynote or Prezi. You know, we want to go into slide software, but don't open it until you know what you're going to say. Now, we've talked about audience, talked about objective. What more can you do to prepare what you're going to say? I advise that you use Post-its to build your storyline. Now, Post-its work like your brain does. When you're creating something, you thinking randomly. You think about stuff that happened yesterday, next week, last year, this year. You think about product, you think about sales, think about new features, and so on. There's all kinds of things that are buzzing in your head. So using Post-its, you can capture those thoughts, get them out of your head, organize them, take a look at them, and build a beginning, middle, and end. Let me show you how it works. But by the way, if you don't have Post-its, here's the quick hack. Get a piece of paper, sheet of A4, fold it in 6, tear it up, and hey presto, you've got 6 pieces of Post-it note sized paper with no sticky bits, but hey, you can just lay them out on the table. The process works with pieces of paper. Post-its are the sort of ninja tool, but if you don't have Post-its to hand, you can't buy them, or you want to just save money, then do it way. Now, let me show you how it works. What you do is you break by thinking, what's everything I could say in this pitch? What's the problem we're solving? Solution we've created? What's unique about that solution? What level of impact could we make? What would we change in terms of environment, social issues? How many people would be impacted? What level of plastic would be reduced, or CO2? So you get all the ideas out of your head. Where's the proof? What's the traction? What's the team that is behind this? And so on. All ideas out of your head until you've maybe got 20, 30 different Post-its written down. Then you take a step back and think, well, what's the big issues here? Who's the audience? What's the objective? And how long have I got? For example, if you've got a 3-minute pitch, then you might want to narrow down those 20 or 30 ideas to maybe 9 or 10 things you're going to say across those 3 minutes. And probably there's some big pillars like the problem you're solving, solution you've created, the impact you could make, validation, and maybe the team and your personal motivation. So those would be the big topics. And then you fill in what you've written down of those topics and start creating chapter headings and organize the content around chapter headings. Now, let me show you what this might look like. This is the brainstorm, getting the ideas out of your head. Now, this is what your brain looks like when you open PowerPoint, by the way. And if you have a look at this, you'll see it looks a bit random. But what you'll also see is it's pain, product, demo, unique, and so on. So that there's a number of pillars of this brainstorm, and these come from the pitch canvas. Many of these pillars will help you as well. Now I'll share with you the pitch canvas in a moment and where you can find it. But if you're preparing for a 3-minute pitch, of course, this is way too much information. So let's think. You've got this audience, this objective, this amount of time, 3 minutes. Well, you're definitely going to talk about the pain, but I've got 11 things written down about the pain. I've only got 3 minutes. Okay, let's choose the 3 most important things about the pain we're solving. Then what's unique about this proposition? I've got 8 things written down here, but let's choose 1 or 2 key things that are really unique. And then I want to talk about the team and so on. And you go through each of these different categories and choose, okay, I've got 3 minutes. Let's choose 2 or 3 things per chapter. That way you work out what the big issues are and create these chapter headings, which might look a bit like this. So the one on the left is the rough brainstorm. The one on the right is where you start to build effectively a prototype for your pitch. So you wouldn't start coding your product without working out the customer journey. This is a form of the customer journey. This is a way of mapping it out. You create the customer journey, the person who's listening to your pitch, and you map it out before you start coding. The coding is PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever slide software. But this way, you can map it out. You can see the beginning, middle, and end, and you can start verbalizing it, seeing if this is the story that you want to tell. Excuse me. And it's very easy to move things around, very easy to adjust the storyline as you go. So this way, instead of working for ages and ages on the slides, you work on the storyline and you'll find the slides are a breeze after you do this. Now, I've done research on this, and this process, this method will save you 20 to 30% of time for every pitch you ever make for the rest of your life. I'm giving you days of your life back right now. So this will help you a lot. This is the process of building the pitch. Now, if you're doing that virtually, you can use Miro.com, Mural.co. Maybe you've got some virtual tools that you like, but these tools will really work for you. Now, what topics should be in your winning pitch? So the tool that I've created is called the Pitch Canvas. I created it, actually, it's already 8 years ago, and it's been validated with a lot of investors. I've worked with all my startups over the last 8 or 9 years using the Pitch Canvas. It's changed and shifted and shaped over the years as I learned more and learned more about what investors want to hear, what startups want to tell. And this is a good starting point for you to start your brainstorm. Now, what it isn't is you should put everything that's in here in every pitch. Remember, it's about audience, objective, and how long have you got. But this will help you brainstorm, get the thoughts out of your head, and then you can start that process of narrowing it down. Now, if you want to know more about how to use the Pitch Canvas, I have a video on YouTube. And by the way, on the previous page, you'll see this link. And we'll share this link again a little bit later. On that page, you will find the Pitch Canvas. There's a whole bunch of other materials there for you. So you can access the Pitch Canvas there. You can also sign up on my website, but on this page, there's no sign up required. You can just download it. And as I say, the method of brainstorming, getting your thoughts out of your head, using Post-its, using the Pitch Canvas, building the story up, there's a 7-minute video that walks you through that process on YouTube. And I'll put that video onto the webpage a little bit later on. But I'm going to pick out a couple of the one big thing that I think should be in every pitch. And that is, what is the problem you solve? The pain that you solve. So if you think about a lot of pitches are, here's what we do. But that, if you just simply say, here's what we do, here's the technology we use, here's more of what we do, have you got any questions? That's really a bit of a dead end when it comes to a pitch. You want people to engage with the story, to feel the problem that you're solving. So by starting with what's the problem you solve, you're more likely to connect with people. People connect with things going wrong, unfortunately. And that is the why of the product. Now, the best way to do this is really to show the human result of the problem you're solving. So, for example, if you have a parking app, telling people parking is quite difficult. So we built an app using sensors and blockchain and Internet of Things so that people can find a parking space quicker. It doesn't really intrigue people, doesn't engage them. However, if you say, can you imagine on average in cities like Amsterdam, it takes people over 20 minutes every day to find a parking space. So what does that mean? It means that while they're driving around in circles, going crazy, looking for that elusive parking space, their family is sitting down to have dinner without them again. So what that does is it makes it specific, 20 minutes, but it also makes it human. They're just driving them crazy. That elusive parking space, they can't find it. And their family is having dinner without them. I have a family, so I associate with that problem. I think, okay, that's something that needs to be solved. So what's the human result of the problem that you're solving? And that's, in typical tech world, it's lost time, more costs, complex steps, irritation, lost customers, bad reputation. In the impact world, that's more likely to be CO2 emissions, kilos of plastic, damage to environment, and quantify it, put a number on it. And what I mean by that is, again, take a typical tech example. It wastes a lot of hours, or they have to make a lot of calls. That's a general statement. We don't believe general statements. Our brains are very cynical when it comes to general statements. But when we say it takes up to 72 hours, or they have to make up 30 calls, our brains get engaged with the topic. It makes more sense. We feel like we've got our fingernails on how big that problem is. The same goes with impact. Be specific. Saying it creates a lot of CO2, or there's a lot of energy inefficiency, it creates X million tons CO2 every month. Or up to 20% of energy is lost through inefficiency. That's a different message completely. So finally, let me see how we do. The most important communication principle, I think, is that do people make decisions based on emotions or facts? And the fact is, no matter whether you're in impact or tech, no matter which we're making, people make decisions based on emotions, and they look for the facts to back them up. Now, that's from Daniel Kahneman. It's thinking fast and slow, and the way the brain works. We make very quick decisions about emotional stuff. So when you're pitching an emphasis, we need to connect them with the emotions. But they also want facts. We look for the facts to back it up. Once we're in there, we then look for confirmation of what we believe and what we feel. So we need to deliver them some rational stuff as well. So we need some rational stuff, but we also need the passion. We need our energy. And I have a last little audio clip for you. It's from Sean Percival. He's a Silicon Valley investor. And originally, I asked him about the difference between pitching for European startups and American startups. He had some very interesting things to say. But the last thing he said when I interviewed him really jumped out at me. And it's just a short few seconds. I'll play it for you a couple of times because it's worth listening to. Have a listen.
And investors invest in conviction. So if you don't have energy and passion, we're probably not going to invest.
Just going to play that one more time.
And investors invest in conviction. So if you don't have energy and passion, we're probably not going to invest.
And I'm a big fan of the power of three, so I'm just going to repeat it for you. Investors put money into conviction. So if you don't have energy and passion, we're probably not going to invest. So we need to engage them with the rational stuff, the facts, the specific numbers. How big is that problem? How what's the impact we can have? What's happening for people today? What proof have we got that it will work? Who are the team? What experience have they got? All those things. But that energy, that passion, why we believe in this proposition, that needs to shine through as well. If you have any questions about how to do that, then feel free to raise that. I've actually made a video on this just recently on YouTube, so you can have a look at that on my channel. But I can just explain that if you have any questions on it. So this combination of rational and non-rational, especially when you're an impact business, you've got some non-rational stuff, some stuff that can catch people with the emotions, but we also need to show the proof. If you're more on tech side, we also need to connect with people with energy and passion. All right, finally, it all starts with you. Your own energy, your own commitment, the way that you bring that story, that makes all the difference. Whenever you show that you're committed, they become more likely to be committed as well. So we're going to move to the questions, and we're just going to share with you what you'll find at this webpage. There's a lot of tools and resources. I've packaged up the slides, by the way. And there's also the online presentation checklist. Hey, we've been doing this for 2 years, but we'll still be doing it for a long time. So there's a quick checklist for you to go through. There's also things about how you keep energy when you're presenting to a computer, and also managing questions. I've got an online pitch course for you. It's a short course, about 30 minutes, cut into 12 chapters. And that expands on things like how to use the power of 3, how to make a strong opening, how to have a good closing, and various other things. And it also walks you through the post-it note process. Then there's my app. It's called Pitch Professional. You'll find a lot of pitch tips there, and also some content about the pitch canvas, and you'll find some example videos as well. Also some impact startups that have had big success. And finally, there's this Essential Pitch podcast. It's my podcast, and page I put a link to the interview with David Batstone. It's really worth having a listen to if you're involved in impact entrepreneurship. So for now, I'm going to just wrap up this part. Do look out for the book. It's called Blue Moon Pitch. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, then I'd like to connect with you. And you can find out more about what I do at best3minutes.com. So Daniel, I'll come out of the presentation. Maybe good if I put this link in the chat.
All right. Yeah. While you're typing the link in the chat, thanks for a fascinating presentation. Really remarkable steps put together, so it's so clear and concise. I've been on many pitch kind of presentations on how to pitch, and this one actually gave me so many additional tools. I really appreciate that. Everyone who is watching us, please subscribe to David Resources, his YouTube channel, his podcast. And of course, because you are just announcing the book, I want everyone to go on, all the possible resources to buy this book, because it's definitely a great resource for you to actually sell or get results of what you're trying to pitch. And I would like to move to the questions. I just have so many emotions after watching this great presentation. Thank you so much for that. Well, everyone, I've just shared with you the links that David just gave me. Also, we will share all the information David will provide us in the video description later on. In the meantime, while you're here, feel free to ask questions. We can take a few questions. And those who is watching us later on, please don't forget to press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to ask more questions. We'll pass them to David, and hopefully we get an answer for you. David, we have a few questions.
Sure.
We actually have 2 questions. The first question is from mobile app monetization. How a hardware impact startup can convince an investor if we don't have revenue and if we need a lot of money to create a prototype?
Sure. So this is a big challenge, and I think that it's all about validation. So in order to test before you've got a physical prototype, especially hardware, there's various ways you can do that. Now, there's a limit to what you can do, for example, for digital testing. But still, there are some things which you can do, and there's some good resources out there for testing out, is there a need to have them solved? So that's the first thing. I think, having that, if there's any doubt about would that problem, sorry, there's background noise here, just a moment. It's just passing by. So first thing is really can you identify or establish that problem needs to be solved? And anything that is proof that the problem you're addressing needs to be solved is the starting point. The second thing is, how do you prove that your proposition is going to be the one that solves it? And that's really about engaging with potential customers. Even if you've got drawings, that is a form of prototype. And engaging with people and getting connected with the customer, the customer voice is the gold dust. And anything that you can do to talk to customers at an early stage and find out, is your idea something that they would even consider? That's the best way that you can go for trying to convince the investor. Investors, what they care about are, of course, problems being solved, big opportunities, but also are people waiting for this? Do they want to have this solved? Do they want to have this solution to solve it? Now, if you've got to create a prototype and that costs a lot of money, as I say, engaging with them in advance, with customers, getting feedback. If you get direct quotes, you get agreement from the customer, could I tell that to can I use that quote? Then that's all good. So this would be probably the number one way to go about that.
All right. So we have another question from Norbert Falvi. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. Impact startups, is it a social innovation or what is it?
So I think it depends what your what the goal is. So, for example, I work 2 different big events. There's one which I've already mentioned, which is the Green Challenge, and the Green Challenge is very specifically about reducing CO2. So that is an impact competition. They're looking for impact startups. I also work on a program with Hilfiger, and they have a social innovation chat. It's actually called the Fashion Frontier Challenge. And the goal there is more about social issues. So if you look at the impact of the fashion industry, of course, there are certain things which are related to the environment, but there's a lot of social issues. There's zillions of people in that industry, and it's a low-paying industry. It tends to be in countries where it's very poor. So what would be the impact? So social innovation, for example, one of the winners was a company who was setting up shops in factories. And if you buy stuff from that shop, instead of buying it in shops outside of the factory, then you would get bits towards health insurance, which most people working in the factory didn't have. And the way they did that was, instead of having to pay rent outside the factory, they didn't have to pay rent, so they could charge a bit. They could charge normal prices, but part of the margin would go into health insurance. So that's an example of a social innovation. The social innovation is focusing towards the people in the process. Now, it might be that you have both. I've also worked with companies that have both. And then what does that tell you? How does that steer you? Again, it's this thing between impact or social innovation and business. Who are you talking to? Audience and objective are really the guiding it for any pitch, and for any whoever you're talking to, whichever type of business, but especially for impact startups, getting tuned into what level will they be interested in impact compared to what level are they interested in a sustainable business. Both these things will be important, but where's the balance? As I described, it's variable.
Right. Another question from SV: how to start and how to close so it infects investors with the idea and triggers them to write a check?
Sure. So I think the triggering to write a check, I think, again, that's related to the objective, and the objective is get them in the path towards writing that check. I wish they would write a check after that pitch, but at least that 3-minute pitch gives you the opportunity. So let's look at it that way. To get them into that next step, what is it that makes people interested? It's big problems being solved. That's the first thing. and it's proof that you can solve it. So I've seen various different ways of opening the pitch. Actually, if you have a look in the free course that I've shared on the webpage, you'll find that there's some chapters on how to open your pitch, and there's some examples. Now, various examples. Size of problem. So, for example, there was one company who was getting plastic out of rivers, and they highlight, okay, there's 8 billion kilos of plastic every year put into rivers and oceans. But 8 billion kilos is too big. We don't know what to do with that. So what we did was we put that in, but we also said that's the equivalent of one garbage truck every minute putting completely emptying into a river. Now, that's a very easy thing for people to imagine. The same with jeans. I coached called mud jeans. We were struggling because it was a certain number of thousands of liters per pair of jeans, thousands of liters of water. There's amazing amounts of water used for it. But how do you quantify that so it makes impact? So we said a certain number of liters, but I don't know how many liters I use in a shower. Maybe I use hundreds. I don't know. So every pair of jeans takes half an Olympic swimming pool of water. And that landed. That really landed. So that's the first thing. Quantify the size of the problem. The second thing is, if you have any traction, if you have some proof, then it's worth saying that in the first 30 seconds. So another company I coached was called SendCloud, one of the biggest startups in the Netherlands now, 500 people working for them. But back in 2015, when I coached them in an accelerator, they were doing good business, but nobody had heard of them. And so we started the pitch with, hi, this is who we are, this is what we do, and I'm here to tell you why DHL and the Dutch Post Office love working with us, and why 400 web shops are already using our service on a daily basis. So what that tells, before you really understand anything about the business, is this business is running, it's succeeding. You better jump on, you better pay attention, otherwise you're going to miss out. So if you press or any traction and any growth, it's good to mention that briefly in the first 30 seconds so that people know this is taking off. Of course, if you don't have traction, okay, then forget that. Focus on the size of the problem. So those are a couple of ways to do it. I think most important is to be professional. Have a plan. Be clear on what you're going to say. So if you can intrigue them or surprise them, make a bold statement, give quantification of the problem, or talk a little bit about your traction in that first 30 seconds, that can make a big impact. But most important is be professional. Have a plan so that you know exactly what you're going to say in that first minute, because that communicates a lot. First seconds, when you hear it professional, something in you kind of says, oh, good, this is going to be a good pitch. But if someone starts like, well, thanks a lot. And I'm really happy to be here. And thanks organizers for the opportunity. And we're under a bit of time pressure, so I better get started. I mean, I've seen pitches like that. And of course, that communicates, I didn't plan this. Even if they did, they didn't plan it quite enough. So have a plan, first, second, get straight into the pitch, plan those first sentences. But if you can intrigue them with something like a bold statement, size of the problem, something about track, that can really help as well. Oh, and then the other question was the closing. So the closing, I would recommend in the last seconds have a 3-point summary of the 3 most important things. The last thing you say is the first thing they will remember. So think about a 3-point summary. So for example, what you've seen is we've identified a multi-billion problem. We've got a solution that's already in the market and validated, and we've got the team to make it happen. So that's your 3 moment stories. Put that in a 3-point, 1-sentence summary. And then give them the call to action. So what we ask you to do is, and then give them clarity on the call to action, 1 sentence, and finish with a thank you, because that gives a professional finish to the pitch. So that closing, a 3-point summary, 3-point, 1-sentence summary, and call to action, and a big fat thank you. Especially if you have an audience, then they'll definitely clap.
I like this big fat thank you.
Yeah.
Do you think, just continuing that question, you would do they need to find maybe a potential supporter on the audience of investors? Like maybe they in advance know that there is one of the investors very much into impact, and so if they sell it to him, so he will be actually their advocate during the pitch for those who are numbers oriented or business oriented people. Like, because sometimes audience of investors are different, and so their mindset might be on very business or very impact, and
Sure.
so having one supporters might be an advocate with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think anything can do to identify somebody that might be on your side, who might have some interest that matches what you're proposing. I think that's always good. And anything, I mean, if you know about that in advance, you can connect with them. You know, that's sometimes we think, well, maybe that's seen as, I don't know, underhand or something, or not, you know, not completely professional. All my experience is that people like it. They like when people are proactive. They contact them. Hey, I'm going to be at this event. See you're on the judge panel. Hope you love my pitch. We'll be talking about such and such. You know, you're not trying to persuade them. You're trying to just make a connection, and anything that goes, you know, that connection will always work. And especially if it's a network event or something, it's not so much that's up for grabs. People will like it if you're proactive, because then, you know, this is how it works. People love to be able to say, oh, I knew these guys beforehand. We had a bit of contact on LinkedIn. I knew they were going to do a good pitch. It was good, wasn't it? You know, they like that kind of conversation that we all like. So, you know, don't be afraid to connect with people in advance. And if you know there's somebody in the audience got an interest that's connected to what you're putting, call that out. You know, there's an investor I know. It's not exactly on this topic, but there's an investor I know who writes a blog. Actually, my business colleague edits the blog. And I think for any startup who goes for a meeting with that investor, then read that blog in advance is really missing an opportunity. You know, it's just the perfect way to start any meeting there. Be saying, oh, by the way, I really liked your blog. The piece you wrote last week about such and such, that really helped me think a bit differently about such and such. It's got to be genuine. You know, don't make stuff up. You know, look through that blog, see what connects with you, because that will connect with him as well, and that puts you together. So anything you can make a connection with the audience, and they could be an advocate for you, that's all good.
Totally agree with that. I actually use LinkedIn quite often to connect with people, and it helps with not only pitching but with many stuff. Well, I have a few more questions, and we will wrap it up. There is a question from Mike Mitchell Wraith. Sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. What's the best way to steer curiosity to create a buy-in, reason to care, listen from the start?
It's a great question. Thanks. It's so when people listen to a pitch, any pitch, they basically have two questions on their mind. Is this person professional, and do I want or need to know more? And the professional part is about planned. And by the way, just being planned and organized and professional will cause people to want to listen more, because it's so surprising. It stands out. Most pitches are not that well prepared. You know, people are busy. They've got a lot of things to do. You're the same. But just putting that extra bit of time in, that first makes a difference. But then that second question, do I want or need to know more? So I think the things that trigger people are surprising statements, bold statements. You know, the classic cliche, but it works, is, can you imagine? And the thing is, it's such a cliche that we're a bit immune to it, but still we can't help our brains going into imagine mode when we hear that phrase, can you imagine? As soon as you say, can you imagine, on average, it takes people over 20 minutes to find a parking space. Can you believe you're going to spend 1 year of your lives looking for a parking space? You know, that we can't help but think about that. We think, really, a year? Oh yeah, it did take me a while, actually. You know, so we tune into those kind of questions. The thing is, a question of some sort is one of the best ways. The thing about questions, though, is they need to be what I call digital questions. So there's only two things that people can do. For example, if you say, do you think it's important to keep the temperature down and reach our global environment goals? Yeah, it's a very general statement. What do we do with that? Should I put my hand up? Should I shout yes? Should I? What should I do with that? But if someone said, who believes that paying attention, taking action to keep the temperature down and reach the 2030 goals of 1.5%, or 1.5 degrees, who believes that's a good thing? Put your hand up if you think it's a good thing. Very specific thing. Do you agree with it or not? Yes or no? Now, as soon as the question is raised, our brain engage with the question. Questions are a form of puzzle. We like puzzles to be solved. So we as human beings are very tuned into solving problems. So we're served a problem, even if we know you're going to give the answer, we listen more attentively. So a question can be a good way. Then the key is to make it so it's very simple. They don't have to think what to do. It's either put your hand up or put your hand down. So keep it simple and keep the questions very digital. That's a way of doing it. But making bold statements. There's one pitch I sometimes use in my workshops where somebody starts the pitch by saying, anything, any place, any time, why wait? My name is George. My team are on a mission to make your lives hassle-free by delivering you anything you want, any place, any time. Now, I have some people who say, I hate that pitch. I've heard that phrase, I hate, a few times, which is really an extreme. And I say, well, why is that? I say, that'd be terrible for the environment. What do you mean deliver anything? That will never work. I say, well, do you want to know how he's going to do it? So they say, yeah, because I'm sure he's going to fail. And that's a job done because you've caused the people to be interested. So sometimes you can make a provoking statement. So to sum up, I think having the best way to create curiosity is make clarity on the size of the problem, make a statement that is surprising about that problem, maybe make a bold statement or a promise that people think you can't keep, raise a question and get people to engage with the hand up or the hand down, or click on the like button or whatever it is, and just something very simple that they can engage with it, because that will cause people to be interested.
All right. I have two more questions from one person. I think this is how, and this is the time to wrap it up, because we already discussed from all angles, and I'll let you go. There are two questions from Norbert Palwafi. First one, how can we sell the product if the project does not create a direct profit? For example, public transportation, the purpose to create a seamless transport and not create profit.
Sure. So I think there it's about who are you pitching to. And if you think about the value there, the value is, my guess is that that's more towards organizations like government organizations and so on. So it's about how you can pitch the impact, and then the business model. Where is the money coming from? Now, maybe the business model is it's subsidized by governments. Now, if that's the business model, that is a business model. There's nothing wrong with that. But having the clarity on the size of the problem, and then what the benefit would be as a result of solving that problem in terms of, for example, safety or reduced emissions, quantifying that result will really help. And if it's not about profit, there will always be some kind of impact. So if you can give a business model which, firstly, the money is coming from one place, but the result of that money is reduced, so improved safety, reduced emissions, something along those lines, this will really help. So think about how you can quantify the result of what you're delivering, and this will help. Even if it's not about monetary profit, there's other outcomes that could be social benefits, environmental benefits. Now, the more you can quantify it, the better.
Thank you. Well, we had a great talk with David Beckett about how to pitch with purpose for impact startups. And we discussed it from all angles with multiple examples from the start to the very end. And we gave you the tools that you can use so you are actually not just pitch with passion, but to actually get the result you're looking for. I encourage everyone to go on David's resources that we shared, and we'll put them in the video description. There are plenty of free resources, and there is his book that he recently published. If you would have more questions to David, just write him here in the comments below. Like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It all helps us to keep going and bring speakers like David to give you this knowledge and expertise, as much support as we can. Well, David, thank you so much for this talk. I really enjoyed it. Really great talk. I appreciate the slides you prepared and with the passion you're sharing it, because it matters to me a lot that we help entrepreneurs, but I see how it matters to you that people successfully pitch their great ideas. What is your final a final closing statement, or what you have on your heart or in mind to share with our global audience so they can keep it with them after the talk?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really to get connected with your purpose yourself, and it's easy to get lost along the way because you're really focused on execution and getting connected with customers, and things go well, sometimes they go badly, and sometimes you forget your why. But keep connected to that starting point. Why did you start this? Why are you driven to make this happen? And what could be the result? What's the golden horizon, the potential impact that you could make? And I think if you keep connected to that, it makes it a lot easier to be able to bring that story when you're pitching it. And everybody's looking for that why. And when you bring that and you're connected to it, it definitely helps the pitch. And finally, I wish everybody the very, very best. Good luck with your pitches, and good luck with making all of that impact.
Thank you. Beckett, best3minutes.com, and Go Global World. We continue discussing challenging topics and give you the tools and power to actually solve those challenges. Well, thank you, David, so much. Please stay here. I'm closing the stream. Everyone who's watching us, thank you so much for joining. We enjoyed this conversation, and if you want to continue or discussing similar topics and need support, go on our global chats at Go Global World, Telegram chat, Facebook chat, LinkedIn chat, or go on our website, goglobal.world. If you still have questions to us, you can reach us out at info@goglobalworld, and we are happy to support you, give you as much support as possible, especially in hard times, if you have any hard times in your business. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great the rest of your days. Goodbye.